This is huge as the Rangers acquired multiple big pieces in free agency this year, and it has Rangers fans left wondering how they will help the Rangers reach their ultimate goal. And Peter Laviolette spoke out on exactly that, and some of his comments were pretty shocking. We're going to break all of them down, but before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you watching our videos aren't subscribed to the channel, so if you want to do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. The subscribe button, it's free. Click it. We all like seeing numbers go up, and you're going to stay up to date with New York Rangers news in the season, and training camp is right around the corner. It's really exciting. And speaking of the new season, the Rangers made some interesting free agency signings and trades this offseason, and no real big splash like fans were hoping for, but we may have some clarity on how certain players that they signed may help the Rangers reach their ultimate goal after, a lot of players went out the other way. A lot of significant pieces, including Barclay Goodrow, and say what you want about him, he did make too much money for what he did, but he was a significant piece. And this was a great article and great piece that covered kind of what Peter Laviolette envisions and believes why Sam Carrick has what it takes to replace Barclay Goodrow in the lineup this season. I thought this was very interesting. We're going to get to some quotes from Peter Laviolette in a second, but I think that the reason they signed Sam Carrick is because of how effective he was in the in the Stnaley Cup playoffs and final with the Edmonton Oilers. And he can actually replace Barclay Goodrow if deployed properly. So I think it's pretty interesting for the New York Rangers. If you take a look here, with the Rangers pushing up against the salary cap and with large paydays in line for Shesterkin, Lafreniere, and Miller, like we've talked about, heading into next season, there's a financial component to each and every roster decision as well. And I think that is what Barclay Goodrow was, right? He was a victim of the salary cap per se, that they had to let him go for that reason. But with Carrick, who agreed to an affordable 3-year, $3 million contract, which I think for what he brings to the table is very affordable, considering the experience he had last year as well, going to the Stnaley Cup final with the Rangers. There's also the fact that he's replacing a popular player in the lineup, and one who is a 2-time Stnaley Cup champion, which is something you can't take away from him as well, and what he was brought to the Rangers to kind of help and do. So pretty interesting there, and it's going to be interesting to see how Carrick fits into the lineup exactly, because will it be a fourth line? I imagine it's a fourth line role, maybe third line. We'll get into the lineup in just a second too, but I would imagine that, but we'll see how it shakes out, and we'll see how Laviolette is feeling in training camp and of course the preseason. And as Laviolette stated, Carrick is a physical player too, and we'll get into the exact quote in just a second. He's a solid 6 foot, 200-pound player who racked up an NHL career high 102 penalty minutes last season. I think that's another component to this as well, where he can play with, maybe Matt Rempe or Jimmy Vesey, right? Obviously, I'm thinking he fits in on that fourth line. And a guy like Carrick and Rempe, that could spell trouble for a lot of teams in the playoffs, right? The Rangers could be not only a offensively gifted team next year, like we know they are, but physical as well. Like it seems like the page is turning a little bit with some of these additions heading into next season. I think the Rangers have finally realized, where their woes were. And I think, with Matt Rempe, he's been training so hard on different areas that maybe you can try and, or maybe, Laviolette can trust him a little bit more to put him in more situations. So it's going to be fun. Carrick appeared in 10 playoff games for the Oilers this past spring, the first of his career, including Game 2 of the Stnaley Cup final against the Florida Panthers. He won 8 of 12 faceoffs. This is the other thing too. Maybe he slots in as a center. Not sure if that's exactly what it's going to look like, but that is an option as well. So going to be pretty interesting to see heading forward here. And his addition to the Rangers lineup is no small thing. He's going to play a huge part, right? He might be a fourth liner, but I feel like the fourth line may have an identity this year that they're just going to, bang and smash. They're going to get in there on the forecheck, and they're going to be hard to play against, and they might fight you, right? They might engage you for a fight, which, Rangers of maybe 2 years ago, not the case. So it's going to be interesting to watch, and we'll get into a quote here from Peter Laviolette. It's tough losing Barclay Goodrow, of course, but we replace him with a character person that bangs bodies, will hit and fight for his teammates, chip in some offense, and play some good defense. And I think that's what the Rangers ultimately we're looking for this offseason, not just from, players who are already here, already in the lineup and locked up to long-term contracts, but new additions as well. And like I mentioned, they're not just looking for it from the guys who've been here, because they do need that. That is something that needs to be addressed as well. But adding players like this helps the top guys like Zibanejad and Kreider and guys like that maybe get a little more physical when the playoffs start to get tough and when the games really start to matter, right? So that is going to be a lot of fun to watch heading into next season. And we'll take a look again at Peter Laviolette's quote. I mean, one thing I wanted to point out before we move on is, like I mentioned, this is a player who will hit and fight for his teammates. So obviously building that bond, building that brotherhood, it's something that you need to win the Stnaley Cup. And, it's the little things like this that hopefully rubs off on the rest of the team when you start to get some energy shifts and, the rest of the guys are like, okay, we got to start going here as well. And I think that's going to be fun to watch. I do think, maybe not a difference maker in the way of, he's going to score, 30 goals, 40 goals or anything like that. I don't think that, but it's the little things in the mental side of the game that he's going to get guys on the other teams off their game. He's going to pressure on the forecheck. He's going to hit you. And I think that is a good thing for the Rangers, turning the tide a little bit. I think he's going to be a difference maker in that way, which is going to be fun to watch, right? Ultimately, it's going to be fun to watch. And this all comes after this article as well. The Rangers' big and tough additions are gone. Now what? So, you had like Barclay Goodrow out the door, for example. There's talk of Jacob Trouba leaving. So what happens to the physicality? Sam Carrick comes in. He could be a very good option, right? We'll see exactly what he does, but on paper, it looks like, he's going to be a difference maker in that way that I mentioned. So it's going to be fun to watch, and that comes right after that. So if you take a look at the lineup heading into this year, it's very, very interesting in my eyes, because Carrick, like you see here, slotted into the fourth line center position. So that's probably going to stay that way with Matt Rempe, at least for the regular season. And as Rempe continues to, hone his skills, and Laviolette can kind of trust him a little bit more, I feel like he'll get more ice time, be put in different situations. But if you look at the first two lines, I certainly wouldn't touch the second line. The first line, we'll see what Riley Smith does on the top line. I do think that has potential to be good and could stick like that for the whole year. Third line's interesting. I loved Will Cooley's game last year. I thought he was fast, especially in the playoffs. Brought the speed, the physicality, like he was hitting everything that moved. Obviously, he's not the biggest body, but he's out there getting things going, which I like. Filip Chytil had some injury problems, and that might be a question mark right now. Filip Chytil in that lineup, we don't know exactly how he's going to react this year. Obviously, he's healthy and should be able to play, but the question there is, does he stay healthy? And Capo Caco, so many question marks there. Does he stay? Does he go? He's probably going to stay for the season. Maybe he's a guy at the deadline that they trade, depending on how the season goes or the opportunity, because he's fighting for a spot in that top six right now. So it's going to be interesting to watch. And again, that fourth line, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch. And when you look at the defense, I mean, I wouldn't change any of this. This looks fantastic to me. Obviously, Zach Jones needs to get some more reps under his belt at the NHL level, but I thought in 30 games or what he played last year, he looked fantastic. So it's going to be fun to watch the Rangers this year. It's going to be an exciting year. And if you haven't yet, let me know in the comments what you think of Sam Carrick and where he might slot into the Rangers, and if he's going to be a difference maker for the New York Rangers. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. It's free.